before they gave you a new name for God. You already had a science of the divine, and it lived inside your body. What if everything they called primitive, the names, the rhythms, the tonal language, the ceremonies, was actually the most sophisticated biological technology ever built? This is the prologue to the living temple, and what has always protected it. Every civilization leaves a signature. The Romans left roads, the Egyptians left pyramids, the Greeks left philosophy written in stone. The African civilizations of this continent left something different. They left a living system. Not monuments built to outlast the body, but systems designed to work with the body, with the land, with the frequency of the earth itself. While other civilizations were asking, how do we conquer nature? The African mind was asking a completely different question. Governance was not politics, it was biology. The chief did not sit above the community. He functioned as its central nervous system. Every decision moved through the body of the people, the way a signal moves through a spine, gathering information from every limb before the body acts. Every decision moved through the body of the people, the way a signal moves through a spine, gathering information from every limb before the body acts. The wisdom keepers, the Sanusis, like Credo Matois, were the sensors of that system. They read the land, the body, the sky, and the ancestors as one unified field of data. Look at these two images. One is the architecture of the human body. One is the architecture of an African community. They are the same blueprint. Time was not a grid. Time was a rhythm, the breath of the moon, the heartbeat of the sun, the pulse of the planting season. The community body moved in sync with those rhythms, the way your lungs move in sync with your heartbeat, automatically, intelligently, without force. Sacred ceremonies were not religious entertainment. They were biological recalibrations, regular moments where the community body realigned itself with the frequency of the earth. And the system had a built-in immune response. Whenever the code faced interference, the community produced an antidote. What was here was not primitive. What was here was precise. And what was here knew how to protect itself. Every operating system has a vulnerability. The African system, sophisticated as it was, had one point of entry that the colonial project targeted first. The name. In the African framework, a name is an address, a frequency address. When the elders named a mountain, they encoded its biological and spiritual function into sound. The name told you what the mountain did within the living system of the land, what energy it held, what it activated in the human body that stood before it. When the elders named a child, they were not being poetic. They were issuing a biological instruction, a code that would orient that child toward its function within the community organism. The name was the first protocol, and the colonial project understood this, even if it could not articulate why. They renamed the mountains. They renamed the rivers. They renamed the children. And with every renaming, the frequency addressed to that place, that person, that moment in time was severed. The ancestral data bank did not disappear. The access codes were simply changed. Imagine someone walked into your home, changed every label in your kitchen. Salt becomes sugar. Medicine becomes poison. North becomes south. The house is the same. The contents are the same. But now, every instruction you were given by your ancestors leads you to the wrong thing. That is what the renaming did. It did not destroy the living temple. It made the temple illegible. And it was not only places that were renamed. The pronouns that encoded a person's dignity, that activated their seniority, their place inside the community body, were stripped the moment they entered a colonial household. A father old enough to carry the wisdom of generations was called by his bare name by a child. The frequency that held his dignity in place, silenced. The languages, This is where the overwrite went deepest. The tonal languages of this continent carry something beyond communication. The same word, spoken at a different pitch, carries a completely different meaning. And what modern acoustic science is beginning to confirm is that these tonal variations are not just semantic. They are biological triggers. Specific phoneme combinations produce specific resonance patterns in the human body, in the chest, in the skull, in the power centers. The language was not just communication. When children were punished for speaking their mother tongue in mission schools, what was actually being suppressed was a biological technology. A technology so precise that it kept an entire civilization tuned to the frequency of the earth for thousands of years. They called it folklore. It was firmware. So this is what the Great Overwrite actually was. The dismantling of an operating system. Language, naming, time, governance. Every layer of African biological science methodically replaced with a flat, linear, external grid that had no relationship to the living body. A grid that told you the temple was a building you visit on Sunday. A grid that told you your ancestors were superstition. A grid that told you the most sophisticated biological technology ever developed on this continent was primitive. Every system that carries life carries an immune response. The human body fights infection. The forest regenerates after fire. The code, the original biological science of this continent, was no different. Every time a virus entered the system, every time the interference grew loud enough to drown the original signal, the code produced an antidote, a human being. And as we saw in our previous episode, when the Madlonga Commission moved to expose the criminal networks that had captured the state, that was not legal process. That was the antidote, wearing a suit. Consider just 3 examples from across the continent. 3 beings, 3 different traditions, 3 different expressions, the same function. Simon Kimbongu, emerging in the Congo precisely as Belgian colonial violence reached its most brutal expression. His mission did not begin in a season of peace. It began at the height of the wound, because that is when the antidote is needed most. Kimpa Vita in the Congo 2 centuries earlier, who took the entire Christian narrative that colonialism was using as a weapon and decoded it through African eyes, who showed her people that the code they already carried was older, deeper, and more complete than the religion being used to suppress it. They burned her body. The transmission survived. And here, in KwaZulu-Natal, at the precise moment when the colonial grid was completing its overwrite of African biological science, another threshold being emerged, running the same restoration protocol, in the specific frequency of this land, in the tonal architecture of the Zulu language, on the sacred geometry of these mountains, inside the living bodies of his people. Isaiah Shembe, one node in a continental network of restoration. One expression of a pattern Africa has been running since before history had a name for it. What these threshold beings left behind was not religion. It was protocol. Bare feet on earth, an earthing protocol. The mountain pilgrimage, a geographic frequency alignment. The dance, a biological recalibration encoded in movement. The tonal hymn nervous system, medicine carried inside music. Every practice, every ceremony, every instruction, a precise biological intervention, designed to restore what the Great Overwrite had severed, and designed to survive suppression because it lived inside the body. The colonial project could burn books. It could rename mountains. What it could not do was reach inside a living human body and remove what the code had placed there. The threshold beings understood this. So they hid the restoration inside the one thing colonialism could never fully occupy. A breathing, moving, singing, dancing human being. This is what the Living Temple series will decode. The system they were all running, the protocols they encoded, the code they were carrying and trying to pass forward. To you, we have already asked, how did the code survive? The answer is standing in front of you. It survived because in every generation, someone became it. Someone let it live inside their body completely enough to transmit it to the next generation. Now this series places a different question inside you. Not how did the code survive? Can it survive inside you? I am the biological altar. Episode 1 of the Living Temple series. Drop soon, where we begin decoding the biological science your ancestors encoded into the body as the first temple. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss it.